So Brian from the Smuggler's Room came up with a challenge, thus I'm answering the call. In Flux Capacitor Challenge, makers have to put the Flux Capacitor from Back to the Future into any universe they want. Batman, Star Wars, Alien, you name it. I decided to make a time-traveling Chocobo from Final Fantasy VII, and I'm going to make it mostly out of clay. Chocobo was the first thing that came to my mind, mainly because of the speed. To successfully travel through time, you need to reach the speed of 88 miles per hour, and since Chocobos, according to the game, can run up to 176 kilometers per hour, which translates to about 110 miles per hour, it's not only lore accurate, but freaking cool. As you can see, I started with a rough size estimate to a Luke figure, since I want this one to be in 1/18 scale. Then I made an armature wire base and wrapped it in aluminium foil until it looked like a potato on a stick. Then I started wrapping it in yellow clay until it no longer looked like a potato on a stick, but rather an appetizing banana. Someone in the comments once said that I'm a lover of anything tedious, and I must agree to that. Because rather than that just make a feather-ish texture with a tool, I opted to make every individual feather. Oh god, this took forever. Cue the time-lapse. Phew, now that it's done, I can make a saddle for our jockey. At this point I realized that the bird might be a little too big than I wanted it to be, but hey, no point in stopping now. All of the details I made are probably not accurate to the game models since I used various screenshots and drawings as reference and just made up stuff on the go. In most cases the name of the game was Trust the Process, so I did. Tell me in the comments what you think of it or if you'd do something differently. As for the legs, initially I thought to cover the amateur wire clothes with clay, but I changed my mind and left them exposed. That turned out to be useful later when the bird became too heavy to stand on one leg as intended. Anyway, once the saddle, stripes and legs of the creature was roughly done, I brushed everything with some isopropyl alcohol and it was time for saving the progress, or in other words, baking.
Later.
And to answer the question, can you bake clay in the air fryer? Yes. Yes, you can. You're welcome. Now for the wings, and oh no, more feathers incoming. I don't know much about the anatomy of birds, so again, I trusted the process and made those dragon-like shaped wings, which will be covered in feathers anyway, so even if it's not scientifically accurate, no one will ever know, right? Ah, what's this? Be gone! Oh, it's just a ball of clay, which will become a cute Chocobo head. At least that's what I wanted to do, but in the end it came out a bit more realistic, I guess. You'll see. Otherwise, the head consists of 2 bulky cheeks, a beak, a pair of eyes, and oh Jesus, more feathers. And me! Why do I always have to come up with the most tedious... Oh, right. So after the head was done, I made several longer feathers for his tail. In hindsight, I should have made more of them, but I was running out of yellow clay, so those would have to be enough. Those more sensitive among you dear viewers might want to avert your gaze for a second. I know, drilling in a poor bird's bum may be shocking to some, but I assure you the creature was well sedated, didn't feel a thing, and the tail feather transplant operation was a success. Finally, it's time for the jockey, which will be none other than the emo prince of Midgar himself, Cloud Strife. Of course, he's starting his existence as an armature wire skeleton covered in tinfoil. Then I gradually added more clay and shaped his clothes appropriately, that is his boots, pants and vest. After a quick bake, I added flesh-colored clay to his arms. I never sculpted a human figure before, or at least not in the proper human shape human. Shinchan doesn't count. So I actually had some difficulty sculpting his muscles, but at the same time I felt that I was learning a lot about how they are built and when they should be, with which I always had problems when drawing characters. I'm sure that I'm still way off of what it's supposed to look like, but I'm not complaining. As any proper anime character, Cloud also has some details in his clothing like various belts, straps, bangles, etc. I tried to include most of them, but of course with fairly moderate accuracy. Let's face it, he's not the focus of this build. The head was by far the most challenging part of this entire project. I'm planning to make more quote-unquote action figures in the future, so this was a good practice, but it didn't end up quite as I expected. I mean, for a first try it's passable I guess, but something in the shape I ended up with feels amiss. Oh well, I was running out of time and had to finish it one way or another, so that's a lesson for future me. Of course, Cloud wouldn't be Cloud without his Buster Sword. Initially, I wanted to make it out of clay too, but then I looked at the side and I saw this cutter knife laying there, which occurred to me has a perfect shape for the sword's blade. I snapped the other end of the blade and glued two of them together because 1, the thickness would be more accurate, and 2, the blade itself would be duller, so there is a smaller possibility of cutting myself because I'm an idiot and it's not that hard for me to do. I made a handle out of a coffee stirring stick and a toothpick, painted them with some alcohol markers and paint, and added those colored rhinestones to act as materials. Any predictions which I chose to insert into the sword? Okay, building time is over, painting time is now. I mixed some yellow and red paint to get an orange color, which I haphazardly dry brush on all feathered surfaces, followed by a lighter yellow to bring back the highlights. I really don't like painting flat surfaces with brushes, but luckily I came up with a technique to stipple the paint with a foam brush afterwards. It gives any surface a really cool texture and annihilates any brush strokes there may be. I tend to use this in almost all of the painting I do. The Chocobo head got a nice sepia wash, followed by dabbing the excess with a paper towel. Then I painted the eyes, starting with white eyeballs, blue retinas, black pupils, and a dot of white highlight in a true anime fashion. Cloud also got a paint job, which mostly consisted of dark blue, brown, and gray colors highlighted softly with lighter tones. And here's the part I was talking about earlier. I think that sculpting anime faces is the most challenging thing you can do with this medium, because the proportions are very easy to screw up. I didn't have a plan for this, I made up stuff as I went and trusted the process. Clearly I need more practice with this, but all in all, at least the eyes came up kind of okay. I don't know, tell me what do you think? We're closing to the finish line. I needed a base for the bird, which will also be the flux capacitor part of the build. First, I made a hole and threaded those cheap fairy lights, which then I wrapped around the armature wire to shorten its length. Then I used this old plushie as a skin donor, which I used as a grass field. No, I don't have static grass. No child is crying after the plushie. It was a dog's toy in his previous life. The dog is fine too. Anyway, once the grass was glued to the base, I mounted the Chocobo on it and wrapped the lights around its legs. This is supposed to imitate the sparks and glow of the DeLorean as it approaches the 88 miles per hour threshold. You remember that from the movies, right? I left the last 3 lights for the flux capacitor itself. As you may remember, the device looks like a glowing letter Y, so I positioned the lights so they kinda resemble the shape and put them into a small plastic case and covered it with another piece of plastic to disperse the light a bit. Then all that's left was painting the case silver and adding the red labels on the capacitor. The very last step of the build was to add the reins to the Chocobo. I used those black coated wires that comes with your headphones. Oh, they're called twisty ties. The more you know. So yeah, I used those and they were perfect for this, since I could easily shape them to a desired, well, shape. And they looked the part too. So that the build was done. All that's left was to put this doubtfully handsome jockey on his steed and ride off straight to the final reveal. And this is my time-traveling Chocobo in Cloud. I had a lot of fun building this one, and I hope that you had a good time watching this video of mine. Check out the Smuggler's Room if you haven't already, and until the next time we meet, have a good coffee and eat your vegetables.